Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're taking on a really crucial, complex, and let's be honest, sometimes controversial topic.
We are.
We're looking at one of the most powerful financial institutions in the world, the International Monetary Fund, the IMF.
That's right.
For a lot of people, I think this organization just it exists in the abstract. It's a headline when a country is in trouble.
Or a name that gets mentioned in sort of hushed tones by finance ministers.
But for you, especially listening here in South Africa, its role is anything but abstract.
That's absolutely true. So our mission today is really to pull back the curtain. We're going to unpack its core functions, the real controversies, and why it matters right here, right now.
Cutting through the jargon.
Exactly. You can think of them as, say, the global firefighter rushing in when everything's about to burn down.
Or the other analogy.
Or maybe the one that hits closer to home, the strict, deep-pocketed uncle who demands you clean up your mess before he'll lend you any cash.
That uncle metaphor is key. But let's start with the absolute basics, because the name itself, fund, is a bit misleading, isn't it?
It is.
We need to be clear. This is not a regular bank. We're not talking about FNB or Standard Bank.
No, you don't go to the IMF for a home loan. Definitely not.
So what is it actually?
It's fundamentally different. It's structured more like a massive financial cooperative, a club in a way.
A club.
A club of 190 member countries. And South Africa, by the way, has been a member since 1945.
Wow. Okay. So how does the money pot work in this club?
Think of it less like a bank and more like the world's most formal emergency stock vault.
Oh, I like that.
Every member country contributes money, and that contribution is called a quota. It's based on the size of your economy.
So bigger economy, bigger quota.
Bigger quota, and crucially, more voting power. It all goes into a giant pooled emergency reserve.
Okay, so everyone chips in. But what's the core purpose? Why do we need this global pot of money?
The main job is maintaining what you could call the global ATM.
The global ATM.
It's to make sure countries can trade with each other without the whole system crashing just because one country runs out of cash.
Right, so if one country's economy starts to wobble, it doesn't drag everyone else down with it.
Precisely. It can cause ripples, you know?
Yeah.
It threatens trade, makes lending riskier for everyone. So the IMF steps in to prevent a worldwide financial crash. It's an act of collective self-preservation.
Okay, that makes sense. So with that in mind, let's unpack how this global firefighter actually works. The sources point to three main pillars.
Yes, three distinct roles, but they all serve that ultimate goal of stability.
So let's start with the first one, the preventative one, the economic health check. They call this surveillance.
Right.
What does a doctor's checkup for an entire nation actually look like?
Well, it's remarkably rigorous. IMF officials do these annual formal visits. It's called an Article 4 consultation.
So they land in the capital and
Yeah.
what?
They sit down with the finance ministry, the central bank, everyone, and they meticulously go through the country's economic books.
And they're looking for what exactly? Debt levels, inflation, that kind of thing.
All of that. But they don't just take notes. Afterwards, they issue a report with very specific, very pointed advice.
For example.
Well, they might look at South Africa and say, Ish, your public sector wage bill is structurally too high.
I can imagine that's a tough conversation.
Or they'll point out that the ongoing electricity crisis is acting as a hard brake on growth. They're very direct.
And do countries have to listen?
Well, no. The advice is non-binding. But it's backed by the influence of the IMF. If they're publicly warning that your debt is unsustainable, every single international investor is listening.
So it's a kind of economic peer pressure.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes the health check a pretty powerful tool. Now, what if the country needs help actually doing the things they recommend? That brings us to pillar 2, capacity development.
Yes, the study assist, as we called it. And this is a huge, often overlooked function. It's basically free tutoring for the people running the country's finances.
You mean? Not just general lectures, I assume.
No, it's hands-on, highly specialized expertise. They might send experts to help a government modernize its tax system to collect money better, or to fix a central bank's functions. The idea is to build up that institutional muscle so the government can avoid needing the big bailout later.
So the first 2 pillars are about prevention. But when prevention fails...
That's when we hit the big one.
Pillar 3, the bailout. Lending. This is where the drama is. This is why the IMF is in the headlines.
This is their core function as the firefighter, yes. It kicks in when a country faces a severe balance of payments crisis, a BOP crisis.
Let's break that down. What does a balance of payments crisis mean for the average person?
It means the country is literally running out of foreign currency, usually US dollars.
And we need dollars for
Yeah.
everything, basically.
Everything we import. Think about it. We need dollars to buy oil, parts for Eskom's turbines, essential medicines. If South Africa runs out of dollars, we can't buy those things.
So the impact is immediate. Fuel runs dry, the grid suffers, hospitals run short of medicine.
Exactly. The country goes bankrupt on the global stage. And that's when the IMF steps in as the lender of last resort.
With massive loans.
Massive loans to, quite literally, keep the lights on.
And that is precisely where the tension starts. Because the moment you take that money...
You enter the world of conditionality.
Right. And in South Africa, just mentioning an IMF loan, that can start a ferocious BRI debate.
It absolutely can, because the conversation immediately shifts from survival to sovereignty. This is the austerity bitter pill.
Tell us about that pill. Why does it come with these strings attached?
Well, the IMF is lending money from that global fund, remember?
Yeah.
They have a duty to make sure it gets repaid.
So they demand changes.
They demand changes to the very policies that got the country into trouble. They'll say, we'll give you the R50 billion, but you must cut government spending.
Or sell off state-owned companies.
Exactly.
So I have to ask about this sovereignty tussle. Is that a fair critique? I mean, if a country has proven it can't manage its own finances, doesn't an outsider have to step in?
That is the absolute philosophical heart of the debate. Critics feel it means losing the power to make independent decisions.
The feeling that the uncle is now telling you how to run your own house.
Precisely. They argue that social spending, employment laws, those things should be decided by democratically elected officials, not, unelected international bureaucrats.
But the IMF would argue, I assume, that the elected officials are the reason the country is broke.
That's their exact perspective. For them, it's necessary medicine. If you don't fix the underlying problems, you'll just be back in 2 years asking for more money.
And these required changes are often called structural reforms. What does that actually look like on the ground for a country like South Africa?
These are deep fundamental changes, not just budget trimming. They often push for things to make the economy more flexible. They might push for labor law reforms, making it easier to hire and fire people. Or, crucially for us, fixing the red tape and inefficiency at parastatals like Transnet and Eskom.
That sounds like a political minefield.
It is. It's always a trade-off. And we have to be balanced here, as the sources are. On one side, people argue these reforms are tough, but necessary medicine to fix things for the long term.
So forcing a fix at Transnet ultimately helps everyone.
That's the argument. But the other side sees these conditions as anti-poor.
How so?
Because they maintain that austerity slashing social services, reducing state jobs, disproportionately hurts the most vulnerable. It's that core tension between fiscal health and social equity.
Okay, so let's bring this home now. Why should someone listening in South Africa care about all these rules right now?
Because the connection is very, very recent. We have to talk about the 2020 COVID loan.
That was huge news. South Africa took a $4.3 billion loan. That was about our $70 billion at the time.
An incredible amount. And it was a landmark moment. It was our first major IMF loan since the early 1990s.
A huge deal.
It showed that even a relatively strong developing economy can suddenly find itself needing that global firefighter.
And even though that particular loan had fewer strings attached, the scrutiny was still intense, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The mere act of going to the IMF opened the government up to immense pressure about transparency and how that money was being spent.
And beyond the loans, the IMF is always there, commenting. Their reports are constantly cited in local debates.
All the time. A major talking point is always South Africa's extreme inequality.
They're the ones who often highlight that we have the highest inequality in the world by the Gini coefficient.
And when they highlight that, they also offer advice on how to fix it.
Which feeds directly into our local politics.
Exactly. Their reports weigh in on social grants, a potential wealth tax. Their opinion carries enormous global weight. When the IMF speaks, the government has to listen.
Which brings us back to that final critical what-if scenario. The reason the IMF's existence is a sharp reality check.
This is the absolute core of it. Every country knows this. If your debt gets so bad that no one else, not private banks, not other countries, no one will lend you money.
The risk is just too high.
The IMF is the absolute last option remaining, the only one left to call.
And if they're the only one answering the phone, your negotiating power is zero.
That's when the strict uncle shows up, not as an invited guest, but as the unavoidable authority. The terms are non-negotiable because the alternative is total collapse.
That puts the whole hero or villain question into such sharp focus. So what's the final verdict?
I mean, it depends entirely on your timing and your perspective, doesn't it? If your country is on the brink of chaos, they are without a doubt the hero.
But if you're the citizen facing job cuts because of the austerity they demand,
Then they're certainly seen as the villain. That tension is permanent.
I think we have to close with that one specific analogy we talked about, the one that captures the South African reality so perfectly.
The strict uncle.
The strict, financially prudent uncle.
He's the uncle you absolutely do not want at your party. He'll complain about your spending, the noise, everything you're doing wrong.
Yeah.
But here's the truth. When your car breaks down on the N1 at midnight, you're broke, and everyone else has their phone off. He's the only one who's going to answer that call and come save you.
So the strategy for a country like ours is what?
It's pretty clear, I think. The goal is to always stay out of his debt.
But keep him on speed dial.
Absolutely. Keep him on speed dial just in case.
A fascinating synthesis of global economics and local reality. So we've seen that the IMF provides these emergency funds, but they always demand deep structural changes in return. And this raises a final important question for you, the listener, to think about. If a country needs a massive, life-saving bailout to survive, can any nation truly maintain full, uncompromised economic sovereignty? Or is sacrificing some of that control the inevitable non-negotiable price of financial rescue?
Something to consider until the next deep dive.